All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Megan. If you are new here, I'm so glad you're here with us. I want to welcome our friends that are here for the live class. But for everyone joining, thanks so much for being here. These classes are all about you enjoying this time for yourself, trying something new, and kind of thinking outside the box when you paint. It's really fun and really liberating to just be a part of the process and just see what happens. It can feel really good if you kind of just take your guard down. So I encourage you to embrace those values for today's class. So some of the supplies that we'll need for today is today's class is a watercolor class. If you ever want to participate in our classes and you don't have watercolors, you can always join using acrylic paints. You can always join using colored pencils, crayons, markers, whatever. Just join us. I have an array of watercolors here that I'll be using. I have a variety of brushes. These are just really basic acrylic, basic craft brushes, really. I have lots of different sizes. I like to keep things simple so people know you don't have to have a lot of fancy stuff to participate in our classes. I do have a pencil for sketching. I'm painting on 9 by 12 watercolor paper. And I have our inspiration here. I also have a cup of water. And I have a palette to mix colors on. So with watercolors, if you have a little palette that has these little wells to hold color, great. If you're using acrylic, you can just use like a paper plate or another plate. So that's no problem. Okay. And then you should have a paper towel on hand. I do not, so I'll have to grab one if I need one. Okay. So one of the things I'm going to do for our class today is I would love for you to get a pencil and we're going to do a little bit of light sketching. Now, sometimes when we draw in advanced, you can really think through like what you want your concept to be. And in this inspiration, the trees are pretty big. They're like near us, right? They're a little bigger. I could make these trees smaller and kind of move up. If I draw a line right here, I can put my trees here if I wanted to, right? In the distance. So you can decide maybe where you want your trees to be. So think about where your horizon line is. In this inspiration, this is the horizon line right here. This is like a green field right here. And then these are imaginary trees in the background. Do you see that? So if you want the horizon line to be here, that's great. But think about the size of your trees. If you want your trees to be off the bottom of the page, they can be off the bottom of the page. If you want your trees to start on top of your horizon line, say this is the horizon line, my paintbrush. If you want your trees to start on this, you can do that too. Okay. So the first thing I want you to think about is where's your horizon line? I might make my horizon line a couple inches from the bottom, just because that's just what I'm feeling like. So if this is the bottom of my picture, if your trees are not on top of your horizon line, you can just start kind of drawing your trees. But I'm going to do my horizon line here, and I'm just going to do a really soft, gentle pencil line. And this is what I'm saying, everything, and this is really soft, but the line is right here. I put a paintbrush so you can see it. So that's my horizon line. I'm going to do my trees on top. Now I want you to think about how high or how low you may want your trees to go. So my trees, you can do the size of your trees in a minute, but I'm going to do my horizon line there. So maybe I'll have some trees here in the background, and I'm going to think about how high I want my trees to be. Do I want them to be really big or really small? I might do my trees to about here. So I'm going to start by just sketching some tree trunks. And you can go as big or as small as you want here. And I'm just going to use my imagination here. So I want you, I'm doing long, skinny tree trunks. We're drawing the tree trunks in. I'm doing a couple skinny ones next to a couple bigger ones. You can use the inspiration or you can just kind of wing it. But we're using our tree trunks to hold white space. Okay. And I am just going to use my eye and do as many or as few as I wish. Now I'm doing a little bit of a forest because that's just what my brain is telling me to do. And I'm going up to about here. I'll hold this a little closer. I'm just going with the flow. I'm just following my own intuition. Let me hold, hang on, let me turn my light. I don't have my usual light on. So let me see if I can show you here. So I just have a bunch of tree trunks like that. I did my pencil lightly because I'm doing watercolors. So I had to have three, three, and two. I'm just going to do a couple more thin ones. Let's see. I really love, and I might do a couple short little buddies too. So maybe we'll just do a little short guy over here. I took a little one in next to it. And I'm doing this just to kind of hold space. Oh, that tree trunk got a little wonky donkey. I gotta fix that one. Try to have your tree trunks straight-ish. They don't have to be perfect. They don't have to even be straight either. Mine was just real bad. Really not straight. Okay. And then if you want to include any other elements that you may want to sketch in, like if you want to put a little bit, if you're going to do just like background behind these, that's fine. But think about the other elements. So in the inspiration, as you're thinking about your trees, there's these foliage trees here, visually in the background. So what I might do is, if these are all white tree trunks, I might just add in a little bit of buffer here to say this is where I want some of my foliage. I'm just kind of doing a little bit of a line just to say, okay, this is where I think I want some of my foliage to be. Okay. So I did a little bit of like a squiggle line across because these are going to be all foliage colors behind these white tree trunks. So I did kind of a little foliage line tucked behind my tree trunks, lots of tree trunks. Those are going to stay white. Foliage colors are going to be behind. Then above this foliage line is going to be like blues for the sky amongst my branches and things. Okay. Now, if you want to put in a couple of branches to hold the white space, feel free to like sketch in a few branches. Totally up to you. Branches get a little thinner as you go. So if you wanted to hold a little white space, you can always paint over these too, but it doesn't hurt. If you want to I'm just doing a little tiny bit of sketching. And your branches can kind of come over and up. So just do a little bit of light sketching for some of those basic branches. Because you can always paint over these. So I'm just going to show you what my sketching looks like. Sorry, you can barely see it, but this is the horizon line here. I have tree trunks here. I have some really basic lines for some tree trunks. And I'm just going to go through and I'm just going to add a few of those initial tree trunks just to have that white space held just in case. Because a lot of these are going to have a lot of leaves on top, but it doesn't hurt to hold the space. So I did a few there. Let me just do a few over here just to kind of hold space. And I don't know which of these I'm going to keep, but it doesn't hurt to kind of pre-plan a little of this and a little of that, just in case. But I'm going to put a lot of color up here, but I'm just doing a few of those primaries just in case I want any white branches to come through. I have the option to either keep those or paint on top. That makes sense. And you can kind of hold white space as you start painting too. It's kind of fun. And if anyone is doing acrylic tonight, that's no problem. You can still, if you want to do this much sketching, you can. If you don't want to, that's okay too. I have a lot of trees, so I'm just being thorough and just doing enough to get going here. Just enough. So my trees have a little structure, but I can always change this if I want to. So I'm just kind of following just basic lines. Again, I have pencil, so I can always erase this, but it gives me an opportunity to hold some space if I need it. Okay, I have a lot of crisscrossing going on. I like the way this is coming out though. You always start to see this more as I start painting. But I have like a whole little forest of birch trees right here. And then I have some branches. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes, as much time as you need to get your basic sketching in. I'm not doing any more than this. And then we can have fun and start filling it in. But this is just giving us some structure. So there's my baseline down there. This is going to be like green grass-ish, maybe some blues and green grass. Then I'll have foliage tucked in here behind the base of my tree trunks. And then I'll have blue sky tucked in here amongst my foliage colors. Okay? Give me a thumbs up if you're good. Give me a one more minute if you need more time. Okay, Sharon. All right. Half and half here, half and half. You guys take your time. No rush. Drawing and sketching can take a while sometimes, so just always go at your own speed in our classes. Terry's got her apron on. Thanks, Terry. She's like, I'm not getting messy. This is like she's in artist mode with her apron on. I like that. Terry, I gotta send you a paint and sip VT Terry iron on for that apron. I want to mail you one. You're a VIP supporter here. I'm gonna mail you a little special gift. For all you ladies, I'll make you those for Christmas, okay? If you have aprons, you could have paint and sip VT with your name under it. Ooh, with a little artist brush. That'd be fun.
Thank you. That would
You're
be nice.
welcome. Just I love iron-ons. I just helped make a custom ski bag for Dan's uncle's birthday using my Cricut. I'm very crafty, imagine that. And you can do any custom designs and iron-ons. You can
Oh,
I
yes.
can do any custom design, custom cut it, and then on any color, and you can iron it on. It's so cool. So if anybody's ever interested in nerding out about that, let me know. Happy to talk about it. But you can do vinyl too. So vinyl can go on like a mug or like a water bottle, like any designs. Iron-on works great on any fabric. It was really fun using a Cricut. And a Cricut is the product. It's like a cutter machine. So much fun. Taps all my creative senses. All right. So I have my cup of water here. I have my palette. One of the first things we can do is play with some of the foliage colors behind these trees if you want. Now, or we could even do the bottom first. Totally up to you. But let's do these foliage colors. This could be really fun. Um, Now, I don't know what everybody has if you have a foliage area, but this is like the foliage above my ground, not the foliage for the top. So if you don't have the same composition as me, just start somewhere and just go for it. For today's class, let me see. Ideal for watercolors. Okay, phew, I have the right paper. Got a little nervous there. Um, for this class, you can do wet on wet or wet on dry. I think it might be fun to try wet on wet for this portion so the colors can kind of blend and be all playful together. So if anybody's never done wet on wet, this is a pretty good size brush because it'll hold enough water on it, but it's not too bad. You basically paint on water first. You make your canvas wet where you want the paint to go. So you kind of want to stay away from your tree trunks, going right on the left and the right side. And you're doing wet ink on wet paper. So that's what wet on wet means. And I'm just going to do a little area first. I'm going to do a little bit on the left side. I'm leaving my tree trunks nice and white. And I'm painting, I'll just do a little space over here first. Okay. And then you want to mix colors that you like. So these are foliage colors. These are like oranges. So I'm going to mix colors on my palette. I like a little bit of red and orange mixed together. You always want to start with lighter colors first. So once I get an orange I like, I can definitely like mix a lighter yellow. So that's kind of a blood orange color. That's pretty. It might be a little too much, but I can play with it. But I want to get a little bit of a yellow ready. Ooh, that's a pretty fall color. So mix enough of this pigment that you're not going to run out. So I'm doing a little water, mixing all my colors. I'm going to bring a little bit of orange in it. Oh, that got really orange. Okay, I'm going to bring this, doing all of the colors of the rainbow here. So I'm grabbing water from my thing, from my cup, and I am grabbing ink. So I have some fun foliage colors. And I'm just going to bring some of those colors in, wet on wet. And just start tucking it in between some of these trees. And if you need to use a smaller brush to go around your birch trees, feel free to do that. And I'm going to bring in a little bit of these oranges. And you're going to let this dry. Don't muck with it too much. Just see what happens. Just bringing in a few of these colors. I'm going to get a smaller brush to tuck into some of these smaller areas after. And I'm just going to rinse and repeat. So I have some of those colors down. I'm just going to work my way across. I'm going to do a little bit at a time. So I'm going to do water on wet water, plain water to fill in my next section. I'm going to let that dry and just see how it comes out. If I need to muck with it, I can. If you need to grab a smaller brush, just get in between the trees. I don't know how many trees you guys have. I'm a little crazy. I went kind of overboard, but I was just following my gut. And we're gonna do another one right here. So I'm doing wet on wet for this application. I'm gonna come in and bring a little pigment in, move my pigment around a little bit. And I can always change this if I want to. It's always kind of fun to experiment with these steps. Oh, it's already doing cool stuff. Nice. And I can always make it a little darker. Like I can bring in some of this blood orange kind of color if I want to. I'm just doing a little touch of the color here and there. But try not to touch it. Try just to do like a little touch and just like watch it spread. Watch it spread around. And then by letting it dry, you get some really cool effects. So I encourage you to experiment as much or as little here if you're using watercolors with us today. Oh, I think I painted on the tree. Definitely painted in the wrong area right there. That's okay. I'm not going to make that a tree anymore. See how it's drying? It's getting super cool. I'm just going to let those be. And I'm going to clean my brush. I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to keep moving over here. I have a lot of trees and I painted one in by accident. Imagine that. These things happen. Don't paint in the trees, Megan. Around the trees. Around the trees. Okay. A little bit more. So this is a wet canvas and you're applying wet paint to a wet paper, a wet canvas. Okay. And then I have that yellow. I'm doing applying yellow first. I'm going light to dark. So I'm doing yellow first. And then I'm doing, and if your colors are starting to pool like mine, you can kind of tip your canvas around a little bit. My paper is starting to morph. Sometimes with watercolor, folks actually tape their paper to a board so it doesn't move. I don't do it watercolor enough to remember to do that. So if you ever want to like try and be really fancy, you could tape your watercolor paper to a board so it stays nice and flat. So you can kind of manage like where the paint goes. So you could maybe we'll try that for our next watercolor class. We'll actually tape it down. We can try to be all fancy if y'all want to. But I am going to I'm applying a little orange, a little bit of this red, and then I'm going to shift things around a little bit because I have a bunch of colors. So I'm going to pick this up and just kind of lean it back a little bit. Ooh, it looks a little tie-dye, Susan. Ooh, baby. Look at that. And then I can kind of just hold and just shift it around. It's kind of fun to see what happens. And it's only going to stay in the wet areas as long as you don't like move it too crazy. But play with kind of shifting the paints, the pigment. If you have too much pigment, you can always use a little bit of a corner of a paper towel to kind of pick it up. You can also use a wet brush to kind of control where it moves. So this one can actually come up a little higher right here. So I can kind of just tap up a little higher with my brush and and that water will just kind of flow up. So it's kind of fun to play with. And if you want to come back in and add a little bit more red or a little more orange punch, you can always come back in and touch in a few more colors. So that's the kind of fun of watercolors. You can kind of do it, you go nice and slow, you kind of do one step at a time and you see what happens. It's kind of fun. So this is the wet on wet technique. And I'm going to really, really try hard to not mess with this. I'm just going to let it dry and see what happens. If I have any pooling I don't like, I'll just use the corner of a paper towel to kind of dab it up. I'm going to bring in a little bit of oranges. I'm going to bring in a little bit of yellows, a little bit of the reddish orange. Just see what kind of magic happens here. Yours may be lying flat. Mine is not. This is also the last sheet of paper on this pad, so maybe that's one reason why it's having a field day. Not sure. But I have a little bit of pooling in areas. I'm just going to kind of shift it a little bit. So I might shift it down, move some of the pigment around, have a little bit of fun. Again, you can grab a wet paper towel if you need to kind of blot it up. So I'm going to go get a paper towel, but have fun. You can see my trees are starting to stand out now. So this is one of the really cool things about using watercolor. As you start with lighter colors, you can let it dry and always come back to it and make it darker. Okay. So I have a little bit of a corner paper towel. I'm just going to kind of seep up some of this extra water and pigment because the color is fine. I just have little pools of water. So I'm just going to just look at gently pick some of this up just to be like a little paint management. And I think that's fine for right now. I'm going to get a small brush and just do a little bit of detail work. Let me see. I have a little bit of a strip right here in between these trees. So I'm just doing a little water on water in between these skinny trees right here. So the viewer of my artwork knows that there's space in between these trees. Look at that. And I'm just slowly bringing in a little color to dance right down and in. Okay. So take a couple minutes and play with that. And I'm just going to make sure that I have all these little gaps filled in with all of the right colors. You can always switch to a smaller brush to apply color. So I just switched to a different brush and I'm going to bring in a little bit of yellows. I want you to be happy with these colors. I'm going to bring in a little bit more pigment here. Again, you can always do more after, but just have a little fun. See what happens. You can go more bold and add more like red colors here. It's totally up to you. I'm just staying fairly light for right now. See how this dries? I can always add more to it. But you can see how my little tree trunks are coming out. Nice. And I love the way this is already starting to dry. So pretty. You can see some of my pencil lines. I'm here to have fun, so I'm not like being too crazy about this. I did accidentally paint over a tree here, so I'm gonna have a little lonely tree over there, which is fine. All good. I wasn't paying attention. But I'm looking around and I think I got in between all the other little trees. Some of you might have just a couple bigger trees. If you want to let this dry, I'm going to let mine dry. Again, you can, if there's any pools of paint, I had a little pool of paint, just use your brush and just move that pigment around. If there's any pools of paint you don't like, or you can sop it up, whatever works. I kind of like that there's some darks and lights. It's kind of pretty. So I'm going to leave it for right now and I might come back to it. If you want to do like blues and greens down here at the bottom, that could be fun. And I'm going to do wet on wet, but I'm going to mix those colors first, my blues and greens. So I have those ready to go. So take your time. I'm just going to mix some cool blues and greens to use for like the bottom area. If you want it to be water, like water looking, you can do water. I'm just going to do a mixing a little blue and a little green. I'm going to mix two colors and kind of play with them at both at the bottom, which is going to be kind of fun. So I have a little bit of, I'm going to find a blue color I like. And in the picture, it's kind of dark, which means you just kind of want, I like the darkness. I like the contrast a lot. So I'm going to mix a green as well. So just more pigment if you want it to be darker. Ooh, these colors are so pretty. Ooh, look at that. So I'm going to mix some colors first. And again, I like the contrast, so I'm going to try to make these a little darker. You can always add a little bit of, ooh, look at that. So pretty. I'm intentionally going to go darker at the bottom. If you don't want to do this, you don't have to. You choose what you want that bottom color to be. But this is going to be the color for the bottom and my sky. So right above my foliage is going to have the same color. Um, so we'll see how that goes. I'm adding a little bit of black to this blue because I want it to be a little darker. And no, I've never played with these dark colors before. Oh my God, look how moody that just got. Ooh, I'm not gonna say I don't hate that. I don't hate it. It's gonna be really pretty with those white, look at that color, with those white birch trees. So I'm gonna do the same technique. I'm using this brush. It's not my biggest brush, but I kind of want to be in control over where I put the water and such. So I'm just gonna do some brush strokes down here. You want the orange to be fairly dry from if you're going to be even near the other, but I'm doing wet for this space. So I'm going to paint the entire bottom with water. And if your orange is even a little bit wet, just stay away from it right now so the colors do not bleed in from one to another. So I just left a little bit of a space right there. That's a little wet. Everything else looks pretty decent. And then I'm going to have some fun. I'm going to bring some of these colors in. Oh, look at that magic that just happened. Ooh. Oh my gosh. I can't even tell you how I just did that. This is wet on wet. This is the magic of wet on wet. Like, look at this crazy stuff that just happened. Ooh, baby. So pretty. And I'm just going to bring in a little green, a little blue. It's dripping down below for me. So I'm just going to get my paper towel right here. This is not laying flat. Like, I really should have taped this, which is, we all just, learn. So it is bleeding a little bit here. So learn from me. Really keep this away from wet areas. But you can like do this as much contrast or as little as you wish. And you can play with like straight lines. You could do anything you want here. And then I'm just gonna let it dry. I'm gonna really try not to mess with it because I want to see what happens with these colors. I will come up closer once the orange is dry. Now I'm not going to add this color here. I'm going to go directly to my foliage colors in a minute. And then I kind of, well, maybe you could, I mean, you want to hold space. I would do, let me see. I guess we could do our foliage first and then do the blue around it. I think that would be fine. So do as much of the blue and the greens down here as you want. I'm going to try to add a little more contrast, aka make it a little darker. but I can also let it dry for a minute, but it's wet and I'm just having fun. So I'm just, and maybe I'll make a little bit of a darker color. Ooh, that's really dark. Get a little crazy here and just see what happens. Okay. I'm gonna let that dry and just see what happens. It could be very cool. I'm just using the edge of my brush and just doing some shorter brush strokes. Okay, and I'm not gonna touch it. Okay, I'm gonna try to not touch it. Try is the key. So I'm just gonna let that dry. And again, I want you to go at your own pace, okay? So the orange here is drying. My bottom is drying. I want you to think about and take your time here. If you're still working on this, that's fine. I'm being patient and I did a little color and I'm going to stop, come back to it, right? But I'm going to start as I'm letting these dry, I'm going to start to prepare my foliage colors again. Your foliage colors can be the same ones you use down here, or they could be a little different. So for me, my foliage colors are going to be these oranges and yellows. And I'm going to start to fill some of that in up here. But I'm also going to be putting in some like more punchy reds and blood orange colors as an accent. But we're going to start with our lighter colors first. So if you are ready and there's no rush, I'm just going to start to make some of my lighter colors. My like lighter yellows, my lighter yellowy oranges for this foliage. And I'm going to mix those colors as my starting point. And you can add water right into your palette. Try this is a nice golden color. That's really pretty. I like that. And I kind of want to have another orange ready to go. So I'm just getting ready before I start the other piece. So those are kind of two nice foliage colors. I'm going to make a little bit more. It's always good to have enough pigment. The nice thing with watercolors is you can keep these pigment trays out and you can reuse these pigments and not have to feel like you have to wash your trays. You can use this pigment again, which is kind of neat. So I have those two as like my starting colors. Those are great choices. If you wanted to mix like a blood orange to like have, you're welcome to. A blood orange is like orange and a little bit of red. So if you wanted to mix 3 or 4 colors, you could right now because they're just going to be here and be ready for you, which is good. So you can grab them if you want to. It's convenient, right? And I'm going to be playful. I'm going to mix a little bit of like a darker red too, just as like a tiny touch. I don't know if I'm going to use it or not. Ooh, I have like a burgundy. It's kind of crazy. Let's see what this is. So mix the colors you're going to use. My trees are primarily going to be yellows and a touch of orange and a touch of those. Okay. So just take a minute to kind of find, oh, that got really red. That's okay. That's kind of fun. All right. So look, lots of colors. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to clean up that brush. We're going to use water. I would encourage you to use water on water. We're going to kind of create the base canopy. Consider leaving some white spots for blue. Okay, so that's one of your challenges. If you want to use your pencil and like block out little areas, I'm going to do that just to show you what it looks like. Areas where I might want to leave a little bit of blue for the sky to come through. I'm just doing little sections to hold for blue. And then guess what? If you don't like those, then you can erase them. You can paint over them, right? Or you can leave, spots. So I'm leaving a little bit and I'll pick this up and show it to you. I kind of did little circles and little spots. Sorry, you can barely see it. But I'm going to use water on water. And I'm bringing my canopy all the way up to the top. So the canopy is going to be, start here. And on some of these lower trees, they're going to start, in certain places. And you're going to use your water to define your canopy. Now you can start in one area at a time. I'm going to use this kind of smaller, medium-sized brush, and I'm just going to start on some of these trees here. And I'm going to do water on water to give a spot for my paints to go and have fun, to play and to blend. Now I'm going around those little blue spots. I'm applying water to my canvas. I'm like kind of fake painting my canvas with water to give my canvas lots of room to wiggle and dance. If anybody wants to tape down their canvas, you're welcome to do that. I'm going to embrace this. This top edge is held down by the bind of the paper, so it probably will hold pretty well. So I'm just going to kind of roll the dice with regards to how the paint may move around. I'm going to paint about half the top with water. You could do the whole thing if you wanted to. I'm just going to do kind of the top part just to start somewhere. And again, I'm just kind of painting it with water. Everywhere that I am painting, the color can spread. Just kind of fun to think about. Okay. Kind of fun. And then I'm going to get a little crazy. I'm just going to start bringing in a little bit of my lighter colors. You can tap it in. You can paint it in. This is like pretty yellowy, so I'm going to go to this orange pretty quick here. This is also going to dry nice and light, so you can always change these colors if you want to. Okay? You can blend it with your brush. You can just paint it on and just see what happens. Okay? There's a whole bunch of a wet mess going on, but that's what we're here for. Okay? If you want to do wet on dry, wet brush on dry paper, do it that way too. Okay? So follow your own beat and rhythm here. I'm just going to continue to, I'm going to paint the second half over here with a little bit, and I held some spots for blue for the sky to come through, but you don't have to paint everything. Like you can leave some white spots if you want to have white spots. So that's totally fine. This is your canopy, so you can paint this any way that you want. We're here playing and exploring, trying different things. This is such a fun inspiration because you can kind of take it any way that you want. So I'm just painting in and around some of these blue areas, these areas that I held for it to be blue, so I can have the sky pop through. And I'm just going to keep painting in some of my colors. So I'm just going to dab in a little bit of my oranges, a little bit of my yellows. This is still fairly light, right? But play with different pigments. So maybe I want to get a little crazy and like bring in a couple of, other colors. I can do that. You want to start with lighter colors, and I'm being a little crazy. I'm kind of doing a little this and that. Start with your lighter colors and then bring in some of your darker colors, but feel free to try whatever you want, right? I have my colors here. I'm kind of just grabbing a little of this, dabbing it on, watching those colors bleed and spread using the wet on wet technique. Really fun to watch that magic happen. And then just let it dry. Like, let's just see what happens. Let it dry, right? It's kind of fun just to see what happens in that regard. I got a whole lot of fun blending of colors happening, and it's like very cool. And I don't know how this is going to turn out, but I'm optimistic about. Then you can think about how far you may want your canvas to come down. If you want to do like, you know, a little bit of like foliage kind of dripping down, like little pieces. So I'm just doing little kind of bits of leaves, just kind of down with the tip of my brush. We're gonna let that dry, right? Before we put blue right there. So see how they have a little bit of foliage kind of just trickling down a little bit. We're gonna let that dry before we put blue there, but it's kind of fun to add that now because it looks really natural, right? How cool. You can again use your brush to kind of move around the pigment if it's pooling anywhere. I love that I have like different areas of color. It's really neat. And I'm gonna let it dry. Like I'm just gonna like see how it goes. There's some really cool colors that are happening down here. Maybe while that's drying, the oranges and yellow down here at the bottom are pretty dry. So I might come in and, ooh, that's pretty dark. Do a nice even coat down here. Ooh, a little bit of dark magic happening down here. It's all right. I'm gonna embrace it. Ooh. So I'm gonna add in a little bit of texture, and if you want to do any secondary details, it's a little crazy. Let's just get a little crazy here. You can use a smaller brush if you want to use a smaller brush. Kind of fun to see what happens. So added some fun contrast down there. That was cool. And I'm gonna let the whole top dry. I am like gonna really try hard to not touch it at all. So I want you to fill things in as you wish. While an area is wet, we are not going to go anywhere near that top for at least 5-10 minutes. If you need to play with any of the oranges down in this space, like if you want to make those more reddy or more red or orange, you can come in and like bring in a little bit more detail. So if it dried, you can add a little bit of water and bring in maybe a little, make if you want to make it darker, right? You can just bring in, if you want to add like little kind of leaves or little kind of, texture details to this back foliage. I'm using the tip of this brush and some of this is wet, but I'm just going to just bring in a little bit of this blood orange just to add a little bit of like leaf-like kind of texture here just to be playful. Okay, so I'm just adding in a little bit of extra texture. I could use a smaller brush too to be in more control, but I'm letting the top dry and I'm not going to touch it for a hot minute. I'm going to use a little water to kind of move around like some secondary colors. So you can bring in and do wet on wet again if you want to. And do a little bit darker layering or darker detail work. Again, a little wet on wet. So if I just bring in a little, just gonna do a little touch, this and that. Kind of fun to see what happens. With a little bit of extra detail here and there. Ooh, that's like really dark. I don't know what happened. I'm gonna bring in a little bit of this now, apparently. Just gonna see what happens. A little bit of like a burgundy color just decided to happen and appear. So I'm just gonna bring it in a touch here and a touch there. Uh-oh, I got on my tree. Don't do that. Keep your trees clean. I'm sure I'm not the only one to get paint on their trees. Except I'm probably the only crazy one to have so many darn trees. But sometimes creating is just about doing what you want and not worrying about it. And I love demonstrating that for you. But you can do wet on wet down here, especially if you want to watch some colors bleed and kind of transform into one another. Kind of have some fun burgundies happening. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but again, once you be careful about, adding too much. You don't want to kind of cover up what you already did, but this I'm just going to try to do a little bit of accent detail on some of this work that I did. I'm just going to add I'm going to try to add a tiny touch here and there. With watercolor, you learn to when to try to add more and when to kind of just let off, but it's just all about practice and kind of finding your own style. Maybe you kind of play with the top of the foliage line. Does it come up high enough? Do you have a little bit of texture? You know? All those fun things to consider. I love that it has a little bit of this punchy red in it. It's kind of neat, a little different. But I'm going to add a little bit of that punchy red in just a couple of areas. I want it to be balanced in color. So I am just, satisfied with the use of that color. Again, use your brush to just apply plain color, like plain water. If you don't know where you want to put your paint, just do water first and then bring pigment to the water a little bit at a time. Okay. So cool. I love that I put this like burgundy color on. It's really starting to come to life as a secondary color. And I'm letting that whole top dry. I'll probably add a little bit of this burgundy to the top as well, just to because I can. But I'm just doing the color is this kind of lipstick red color, I guess. But it's more of a cranberry. And I'm just kind of tucking it in. It's kind of nice secondary complement. And I'm just gonna let it dry. I'm gonna take my own advice, put down my darn brush in a minute here. Once I have the color and all the spots, I'm just gonna see what happens. Okay, I'm gonna stop. I'm just gonna see what happens. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry. I think that's gonna come out really cool. Now my top is still drying, which is good. I'm gonna rotate my canvas a little bit. I'm gonna be patient, okay? So with watercolor, and this is gonna come out so cool. I love that I can see like the fire of the foliage already happening up top. I can see like the fun foliage colors happening back here. And I did bring a little of those foliage colors down. If you want to bring them down further, it's totally up to you. Mine are really subtle, but that's okay. I'm just going to show you a little closer. There, you can see some of my foliage just coming down. And I have all this wild and crazy wetness that just happened. And I have some really beautiful contrasting blues and greens down at the bottom. More green tones down here. I am going to put these same green tones, maybe tie in a little more blues behind in this whole mid area. This mid area is going to connect to the bottom of the trees. So we want the top to be totally dry before we do the blues here because we don't want these blues getting into this. So this is one of the important principles of watercolor is letting things thoroughly dry before you move on from like one thing to another. So we have to just have a little patience in that regard. So, and you can see the inspiration, an example of the placement of color. While this is wet up here, if you wanted to add in some of those burgundies, you could do a little touch, like if you want to do any matchy-matchy. So if I wanted to touch in like a little bit of these burgundies and just like some spots, just to kind of see what it looks like, you could touch in a little bit of these burgundies up on the top. Totally up to you. I am just experimenting like a free soul. God help me. And look at that. I'm just tucking a few of those in and it's blending in beautifully. This is the wet on wet technique. Okay. Look at, I used all of that. I'm just grabbing and just dabbing it in. And that looks great. So pretty. And it's going to dry beautifully. I got a bunch of weird spots right here. I don't know what's going on. Maybe I'll just do touch some of this in here. I'm gonna tuck in blue around all these little leaves and things that I put in. But if you want to do any little leaves coming down, you can get a little crazy, add some leaves. And add a little bit of leaves here and there, little leaves. Trying to stay out of my white trees, right? We're gonna do some detail work around those trees too. But we gotta let all this dry first. Gotta let it all dry. If you want to get a hair dryer, if you want to just be patient, just kind of, if you, I left a bunch of white gaps because I'm going to tuck some of the blues up there. If you want to dab up some of the water to help it dry more quickly, you can do that. You can use a small brush and kind of go right in between some of these branches so it's nice and tight. So this is kind of, I want to say cleanup work. You don't need anything on your brush, but it's cleanup work in between your branches, making sure that the foliage comes right down next to your branches, kind of dancing right around. If you need to get a little bit of a color to help with that, you can grab a little paint pigment on your brush. That's fine. But usually it's pretty wet right now still, right? So you can use the wet pigment around you just to outline any branches. Okay. I have a little bit of dancing leaves coming down. That's so cute and pretty. But look at each of those branches. You probably don't have as much as I do, but just going right next to. Some of you might. Some of you might have done really detailed stuff. But how cool is this? Again, if you want to, if there's any major, wet areas, you can use the corner of a paper towel to kind of blot it up. I have a little one right here. I don't want to pull up all the paint, but it's pretty wet, so I'm just kind of just sopping it up some of it. The paint's still there, so that's good. So a lot of the times with watercolor, you paint something and you just leave it alone, you let it dry and you come back to it. Especially if you want to really let the pigment set in. So with our classes, we have to just be a little patient to make sure we have the color that we want in the right places. We don't mess up the blend. Yeah. Huh? I'm all set. Thank you. My son's so cute. All right. So I have this all drying and I'm really starting to see all these colors come through. It's going to be so pretty. And it's like so hard to be patient and wait. I'd also use your small brush, go on your tree trunks as well to make sure that your tree trunks are nice and crispy with nice solid colors coming next to those. Really important. So I'm going to use my small brush and just outline my tree trunks on the left and the right, especially where this foliage is down here, to make sure those tree trunks are nice and crisp. You probably have some messy areas like I do. Don't worry about it. Not a big deal. But by taking a minute, and if you need to go grab some pigment by like a nearby tree, you can just do some nice smooth brush strokes. If you need to get some pigment from your palette tray, I want a nice clean line next to those tree trunks on the left and the right. Right, left and right.
Did
Okay.
it look like there were tall green trees in the background on the horizon? On
It's
the
it's totally up to you if you wanted to put green trees. I
Yeah,
did like foliage trees in the distance, and I'm gonna have sky up here. So I would say like where you want to tuck in like other greens or blues, you like make that choice, right? You
okay.
based on what you
Okay.
think your vision may be,
Okay.
you
Okay.
know?
Yeah. All right. I think I might have a little bit in the background.
Yeah, so if you have a
Green.
gap, really good question. If you have a gap, figure out what that gap could be. Is it more foliage trees? Is it a set of green trees? Do you want to turn it into a purple mountainside? Like all those things, right?
Okay. Okay. Yep. Good. Thanks.
Anything you want, but good question. It's definitely going to happen.
Okay.
And I'm going to make sure the line right against my grass down here, my bottom, is nice and clean as well. So I'm just going along the edges here. I want that top to dry as soon as possible. I have some nice, you can see my tree trunks are really starting to come out. And we want these to dry down here too, because we're actually gonna, we'll use a little bit of, we'll do some depth work with our trees as well. So if we have nice clean lines, those trees are really gonna jump out with some of those secondary options, those secondary details. Awesome. All right. I'm all set. Thank you. I'm all set. Okay. I'll see you up in a little bit. Okay. Thank you. My son is so cute. All right. So when you're ready and things are starting to dry, you can bring in that mid-tone color. Be careful. I'm not there to supervise. You all got this, okay? I'm gonna clean my brush. I'm gonna figure out what color I want to use in this mid area. I can kind of start doing it, and I can kind of stay away from the wet areas and go pencil in after. But I'm gonna make sure I have the right colors mixed first. So I have a bunch of these darker colors. And I'm gonna just lighten these up a little bit here. So this is gonna be a little bit, I want them to be similar, but I definitely wanna like rein it back in. I like the greenish blues, so let's see what I can do here. So find the colors you want to use for your quote unquote sky. I'm doing greens and blues. It's not going to be as dark as my bottom, but it's going to be sort of similar. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just here. See what happens. I do like the contrast though, so I'm just gonna be a little playful. I don't know what that is. That's blue, I guess. Okay. So I have some colors. I do like the greens though a lot. Let's see. Okay. I think I'm okay. I have some blues and I have some greens. And I am going to use a brush that I'm in control. And I'm going to use a small brush and I'm going to do water on water. Okay. To start, I'm going to go really carefully. Start in one area. I don't know if you all have small trees like I do, but I'm going to stay away from my orange right now. I'm going to deliberately leave a white space in between some of these areas. I'm going to go nice and tight next to my trees, but stay away from my orange. I'm going to do a small space to show you. Be careful that water doesn't drip anywhere that you don't want it to drip. I'm going to go right up against these trees. I got a lot of skinny areas. So I'm going to do some of these skinny areas first just to show you. And I'm going to be a little crazy. I'm just going to go for it. Oh my gosh. Look at this magic happen. Okay. This is so crazy. All right. I'm going to bring in a little bit of green because I want green too. Okay. I'm going to embrace the process. I'm going to go back and do more water on water. And I'm going to continue to bring in color where it's dry. And I'm not going to touch that. I'm going to let it dry because it came out real cool. I'm going to bring this down. Stay away from any wet orange areas. And I'm leaving a little bit of a white gap in between my orange right now, just for safety purposes. This is a pretty solid contrast. Oh my gosh, there's like some major magic happening here. All right, I'm just doing a dot of color and it's gonna spread. I'm doing blue and green, and I'm not gonna touch it. Ooh, so I'm just doing wet on wet with plain water first. My water's like has a little bit of a green tinge to it, but that's okay because we're putting colors into it. I'm painting in between my trees. Try to manage your water so it doesn't drip on the white of your trees. I'm kind of going dancing in between some of my branches, right? I'm gonna go grab some of that blue and just go, well, bam. This blue it's like really strong pigment, so it's spreading like nobody's business. It's kind of cool. And then I'm doing the blue, and then I'm immediately going to get some of the green. That's why I'm getting these dual colors. So I'm doing a touch of blue and a touch of green and letting the colors spread on their own. That's how this is happening. And then I'm just cleaning my brush and just doing wet on wet in the next area. So I hope that makes sense. But I'm going tight against these trees. You can leave little white gaps. You don't have to fill in the whole space. I have some like little magical areas happening where I didn't fill in the whole blue space. You can leave little white gaps if you want, just as like some fun kind of flair. So wet on wet, and then I just do a touch of the blues. And while it's wet, you can always go back in and add that like, more pigment if you want. And I'm not touching this. This is like super cool. Okay. And this is where the wet on wet with a small brush, you have control to get in between all those branches. So cool. And you can leave it very wet. It will dry, right? So it can be like very, like there could be pools and puddles, like that's okay. Okay. No big deal. And then I'm gonna go get some of the blue, bring this to life. And I'm just doing a dot of this pigment I created in these areas. And I have the blue and the green pigment. I like the blues and the greens. So this is a little wet here, my orange. It got into some of my orange. So I'm just going to quickly wipe that with my finger. I think I saved it. So just be careful. You can always do touch-ups in between your branches, okay? You could always bring this color down more tighter to your orange foliage too if you wanted to. I love the way that this looks. I'm going to try to do a little bit of that wet on wet down here too, but I'm going to keep just working my way across the top. This is a larger space over here where there's a lot less. Actually, this is supposed to be some branches right here. I miss this area. Um, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do a little bit of blues and then I'm gonna let it dry and I'm gonna do oranges around it. I'm gonna do this part backwards because I messed up. That's okay. So I'm gonna do the water below and I'm gonna do the orange. I'm gonna tuck in some foliage on top of these little trees. I forgot to do foliage on these little trees. No big deal. So I'm just going to have fun and I'm just going to drop in a little bit of blue here, like there's blue coming through. I'm going to do blue coming through up top. Remember all those white spots I left up there? I'm going to do blue up there too. This is blue. Do not go into my orange right here. Don't even think about it. Stay out. Because blue and orange will give you brown. I don't want brown. Get out of here. Get out of here. Okay. So pretty. Just take your time. Use the tip of your brush. See how you can control where you're applying this paint. How fun. And look around. Is there anywhere else that you can do wet on wet? If you have any little blue areas. If it's dry up there, don't touch up top yet. If this is wet, don't even think about going up there. You be patient with me and wait. Try anyways. You don't want to rush the process of letting one area dry. I don't want your colors to get all mucky. I want you to appreciate all of the colors. But where your oranges are dry, you can go around there, okay? But be patient. I love the blues and greens mixed together. It's so fun. You can do some tightening up too if you with the tip of your brush. You could go tighter around some of these trees. So just take your time doing just gentle brush strokes, tighter around some of these branches. I was going a little footloose and fancy free before. I'm just coming in a little tighter now. With just the brush tip, can really start to see some of the branch structure, especially over here. You can see I kind of got in there. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're just having fun, right? You can do as much or as little of this as you want. If you want to cover something up and put blue over it, go for it. Try not to muck up the colors too much. If they have cool blends going on, just kind of wait a minute to see what happens. I'm not going to mess with that because I have some cool blues and greens happening and I don't want to blend that when it can dry and seep into the paper and be really cool. I'm not going to touch anything in this area because there's blues and greens and I want them to dry that way. So I'm saying that out loud so you can make those choices on your end. And you don't want to move it around too much, like tip it left or right, because you want things to dry flat. We are going to do some detail to the birches as well before we wrap up. So just be patient with the process. You all are doing great. I cannot wait to see your work. Do not lift it up and show me right now. I would not ask you to do that. We want this to dry nice and peacefully. I have some white area here. I'm going to add some foliage colors once this blue dries. So I'm going to be patient and let that dry. I'm going to use my finger or maybe walk around the other side of my canvas to see if this is dry over here. Ooh, this is dry. So once this is dry, I can come into all these little nooks and crannies, and I might even do it from the opposite side here and do my blue that comes in between. So I'm just doing water on water with where you held, if you did hold any areas for the sky to come through. That's what I'm doing water on water right now. So I'm just painting water on so I can bring in those blues and greens I just did. So it's kind of fun to like consider that. You don't have to. I was just experimenting. I haven't done like this style before, really. Ooh, baby, baby. So I did a few of these. Let me just grab the pigment, see what happens. Ooh, so pretty. You can just do a little and let it dry and see what happens. I like the blues and the greens. And you may want to make your sky or your trees a little more vibrant. You can always do that after. You can do that as a secondary step. I'm going to make a little bit more of this bluish green color. I liked this a lot. Bring in a little bit of this fun green into these spaces. And this is kind of cool contrast. I can always come in here and make my trees brighter. So with watercolor, again, you start with lights and you go to darks. So this is a really cool experiment of, oh no, of just seeing kind of how it goes. So I had a little bit of an explosion here. That's okay. I'm going to embrace my imperfections here. So you just need to be careful. I'm sure some of you've had happy little mistakes happen. Okay. And I'm just going to let these dry and just see what happens. I'm not going to go too crazy. Again, use your brush to, and I love the contrast, so pretty. Use your brush to kind of move the paint around, fill in next to your branches, fill in next to your, so I have a lot of, look, I have a lot of sky coming through, which I'm looking at from afar, and it's kind of neat. But I'm not going to touch that sky now. I want that to dry 100%. So I can go back in and really have my foliage pop. I have a couple more areas tucked in with these trees that I need to use a smaller brush and do some more oranges. So we're really all just kind of beating our own drum. I'm going to do more orange work, but I want all of my blue to dry first. Okay. So if I'm letting my blue dry, maybe come back down here. Is there any additional work you need to do down here? I had a little bit of bleeding happen right here, which is fine. Like it's a happy little accident. If you ever want to like try to blot it up a little bit, you can, or you can just embrace it, like bleeding down. I'm sure some of you it had happened to you too. So that's that. Um, because this corner was like a little bit wet and that blue just kind of seeped right down, which is fine. Sometimes it happens, but I'm not going to touch anything here. It's still very wet. I am interested in bringing in a little bit of this punchiness down here. So I'm going to just use a little bit bigger of a brush. I'm just going to be a little experimental here. Let's just see what happens. Let's just, I love experimenting. I'm bringing in these teals and these blues stuff right here. So you could bring in as much or as little as you want here. I just like those colors and I just wanted to bring some of those greens back into this space. Now, one way you can really make it pop and have punch is having really strong pigment. And I'm going to just demonstrate that for you. So this is, and it will give you some really nice lines. I'm not going to do too much, but I want you to be able to see it. Again, I'm doing contrast intentionally down here, darker. And I did kind of a clean line across. It's not perfectly straight, and for me, I don't need it to be. There, I'm gonna put that down. I added just a little bit of the teals and blues just to kind of tie it. Looks great. But again, I'm gonna be patient and let this all dry. It's all gonna start to bleed a little bit. And just dry. It might bleed a little bit if it's wet. This was a little wet right here, but that's fine. But everything else is holding. So if you want your colors to hold and not move, just don't touch it. If you wanted to use this like corner of the paper towel trick and just slowly, gently blot up any like water pools, if it's not messing with your color and your pigment, I would say try it. It helps for the process of our class today. If you're at home and you can walk away, make dinner and come back, that's great. Today's class, you all probably have dinner to make and all those things. So I'm just gonna just wherever I have a lot of thick water, I'm just gonna slowly blot it up. My little paper towel is drenched, so I'm gonna get a new one. But you can see how we're coming together here. I'm just getting another corner of my paper towel, letting this dry for a minute. And anywhere I see many major kind of wet pools, I'm just using the corner of a dry paper towel and just gonna, as long as it doesn't like move the pigment too much, I don't want it to pull up any crazy blending. But anywhere I feel like it's safe just to do a little dabbing to help the drying process, try it. Because you can see when the pigment it's stuck down, right? You're not wiping it, you're just holding it to take up any of the extra water. So don't wipe, just hold it near it and let it suck up some of the water. And you're going to see when it picks up the pigment and you're going to see when it's just picking up some of the extra liquid. So do just enough so it doesn't change all the color work you did. And you can also use the corner of the paper towel to add any additional texture. So if you want to do like any like texture work, you can play with like there's like little ridges on the side of the paper towel. If you want to add any like fun texture, you can use a paper towel for additional texture. So be playful. Art is such a fun thing when you know you can kind of just do what you want, you know? Kind of neat. And it's drying nicely, especially that I picked up some of the extra liquid. It's only going to take a couple more minutes now to dry. Nice. And I'm going to do the same thing on the top up here. Gentle tabs, gentle, like picking up the liquids. Finding a clean, dry edge of the paper towel to pick up the liquids. And again, watercolor art is very similar to acrylic. It's all an evolution. So play with these steps. It's kind of fun to play with the texture of paper towel, especially have like a dotted design on mine. So it's kind of fun to see that. You can also like if you want to play with, yeah, most of my stuff on the bottom is pretty dry. So again, I have touch-up work to do with my oranges. Um, I do have detail work that I want to do on the branches, but I want things to dry pretty well before we do that. Um, let's see what else. If you want to try any of the textured work, you're just going to need a light gray color, and I'll just have you be really careful. Let me find a small brush of choice. Let me see what I have. Find a brush with a nice small kind of fine tip point. This one's good. This is pretty basic. I want you to find a gray color. So this is kind of a blackish gray that I have. I'm just going to add some water to it. And then I just want you to pick, one side, go somewhere that's fairly dry. My orange area is pretty dry. On the left side of each tree, just do a little bit, do a thin line. And then you can do wet on wet or you could do wet on dry. I'm just going to do a little bit of both just to see what happens. So you choose, stay away from your blue if it's wet, but on the one side of the tree, add a little bit of gray texture. And then you can decide if you want to have it to be more contrast or not. I'm doing wet on dry, but my brush is fairly wet. Okay. And I'm trying to be really careful. Use a nice thin brush. And you can play with how much contrast you bring in as well. So the wet on wet is really interesting. My trees are really tiny, so I can't add too much of this. But you can play with adding some of this birch like detail. You can add some kind of horizontal texture. This is all up for your own interpretation. So do as much or as little here as you wish. It can be, it can have contrast. It can be darker. That's totally fine. I know Susan likes having dark contrast with her birch trees. If I remember that from years ago, she goes, Megan, I added black and I like it. Was that you? I think it was years ago. And I'm like, I love it. Because I think you were like, I looked at the birch trees outside. I think that was actually, Susan, one of our first interactions. You're like, look at I did this. And you're like, I took it from a picture or something. And I'm like, I love it. This lady just like did what she wanted. This is like what it's all about. So I'm just going to be really playful. Again, stay away from areas that, maybe are still wet, like some of these blue areas, but do a little bit of this gentle outlining. I am going to add more orange around I have a bunch of gaps up here with some of my trees, but I can see some of my pencil lines, which is fine. I'm just doing a little tiny bit of gray outlining here and there, just some texture. You can play with the wet on wet, you can play with the wet on dry, it doesn't matter. But then once everything dries, you can kind of go in and fill everything in. Try to hold the white as much as possible. Like try not to cover up the whole tree with the gray. It's kind of tricky. but just take your time. This is the detail that can take a long time. And I know friends like Sharon and Janice and Terry, you all will take your time and do all this meticulously, which I love and appreciate. Love and appreciate. But just a little gray to one side of the tree. Add some fun texturing. Again, my blue areas are sort of still wet, so I'm kind of staying down low for right now. But you can see the difference. The trees are really just going to start to come to life as you look from my left to my right. And it's not perfect because I'm going to go in and do some touch-ups, but you can start to see the true evolution of like how our painting is coming together, which is really fun. Love it. But I like the kind of the wet on wet. It's making things kind of blend. I'm trying to stay out of the blue because I don't want it to get too mucky. I also don't want it to be too dark either. So if it's going on dark, you can kind of modify that if you want to. I just sucked up some of the darkness. And this is if this is dark up here, I can just use my paper towel just to kind of suck it up a little bit, pick up some of that pigment. Take my pigment away. This is another really cool inspiration to do with an ink pen, Sharon, if you wanted to. It could be very, very cool. I love what an ink pen does with watercolors, so that could be a really fun consideration for us, especially as we consider some of this like darker branch detail. So look at this final. See all the darker contrast? So, and there's these like branches that kind of come up on top. You could do that after. Again, you can do as much or as little contrast as you want. I kind of went halfway with my contrast, which is fine. Um, but and my trees are tiny. Some of you might have bigger trees, so you might be able to really play with the birch detail. I have to be a little careful because these are really thin. So, so just be playful, take your time. Use water to move around paint pigment if you need to. If you don't like paint pigment you put on, just like me, just use your paper towel and just blot it up gently with the corner of the paper towel. Easy peasy. Okay. I'm going to come in and do some of my oranges in a space right here. I missed some of my foliage, so I have an opportunity to come in. I'm going to stay away from my blues. That might be wet. So I want you to recognize what gaps you have, what areas you may need to kind of come in, fill in, finish up. Everyone's at different spots. But again, try the wet on wet, try the wet on dry. You're gonna have lots of little white gaps show up here and there, so you can always touch those in as you go. But go around any of these nooks and crannies. You can always touch that up after too. You don't need to do that all right now. But this is like it's a pretty detailed piece for watercolor, but I thought it was worth it. If anybody wants to add in any pumpkins as secondary objects kind of on top, some of you might have already included pumpkins. We talked about that a couple weeks ago when we worked together last. If you wanted to add any additional elements, you could do that. Some of you may have built that in along the way. Apologies, I didn't mention that earlier, but certainly personalize these any way you wish. If you wanted to put pumpkin on top, you could do that kind of at the bottom of your trees if you had the space. If you want to put any critters in your trees, like a squirrel or an owl, you could do that. So it's kind of fun to think about all those different options. I'm just filling in some of this foliage area that I missed around this lower tree because I'm a ding dong. Forgot about it. So I'm just doing a little bit of touching up here. Add a little bit of yellow, a little bit of orange. I have some fun blue colors here, like the colors are coming through. Again, you're going to notice all these little nooks and crannies in between your branches if you have little trees like me. So I have to come in here with the side of my brush and just make sure I don't have a ton of white gaps, right? But everyone did different sized trees, right? Some of you probably did big trees, some of you might have done smaller trees. I cannot wait to see what you've done. I'm on the edge of my seat, I'm not gonna lie. In just 2 minutes, I don't want you anybody to show if things are wet. So you all, if you are new to our Patreon and our artist community, within our Patreon space, which I'll include a link below, we have an artist community or a community chat where we like to share our artwork with one another. And it's such a fun spot to see how everybody does after all of our different classes. And I just want to thank everyone who is on the live. You guys are always so fun about sharing and sharing feedback on your experience. So thank you for always doing that and sharing all your ideas on what we should be painting. Um, but I encourage everyone on the call and anyone listening to this tutorial to share your artwork with us so we can all see how you did because we would love to see it. Always love to see how you do. But it's really fun to see how we're all so different, but also how similar our art comes out together based on and how we use colors in different ways and this and that. So I have a lot of nooks and crannies in between my trees and branches, but I love that I included some blues. For me, it was just a fun thing I wanted to try. So I hope that everyone's enjoying this so far. I thought it's been really quite fun. There's supposed to be blue right there, but I'm just going to cover that right up. But I have a lot of nooks and crannies in between these branches that I missed with my initial foliage color. So I'm just coming back in and filling these in because I can, and I'm in a safe spot to do it. There's no blue.
I'm going to show mine, Megan. I've got to run.
Is it, I don't want you to show it if it's going to just,
Yeah, it's
is
pretty
it
dry.
okay?
I gotta do more at the top.
All right, hang on. I'm gonna remove my spotlight and we're gonna check it out.
Let's see if I get it on there. I don't know if I did or not.
I'm gonna pin Terry so we can all see it. Oh, I can see some of it. Push it
It
over a little bit more. Oh my gosh, beautiful. I love
was
your little
fun.
trees.
Oh, I like the watercolor. It was great fun. This was a good one.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you so much. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
sharing. And as always, thanks for being here.
And I look forward to seeing everyone else's.
I know it's
Good.
always fun to see
Yes, it was
everybody's.
fun.
Thank you, Terry. Take care.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye bye. Love it. Yeah, so and this is where you can keep going. You can also let this dry and pick it up another day and keep adding, the water on water technique allows you to kind of add in that structure and you can add more contrast, right? So look, I'm adding more contrast right here under those trees. Isn't that pretty? So you can add in some darker areas. So look, a little bit of extra red on the undersides. Look at this. This is like a level 2. See how they're just making some really beautiful contrast? Here on the underside of these trees. I'll add a little down here so you can see it. This is like my blood orange color. I'm going to add a little bit of the extra blood orange just on the underside, like on near the bottom. Look at those colors. It's making it really fiery. So this is, another example of like the evolution of art on how it can constantly change and just can morph into this really cool stuff. I'm just gonna touch in a little bit of blood orange on the underside. How cool is that? I'm gonna add a little bit more right here. And you can do like brush strokes too. Like if you want to add any particular detail by outlining, you can add brush strokes. Okay? Look at that. I love that fun blood orange. I'm gonna tuck some of that in over here and under here because I already have it pre-mixed right here. So I'm just going to tuck it in over here. And I'm going to use water wet on wet just to add it in. So I'm putting a little bit of water in first, and I'm going to let it bleed in and mix in with those other colors as it wants to, which is kind of neat. And the inspiration it has that too. I'm going to make a little bit more of it because I'm running out. But I'm going to mix a little bit of orange. And it's a blood orange is red and orange basically mixed together. You all probably knew that. There you go. But you can also kind of touch it in certain areas up top. So if you want to just do a little bit of this wet on wet, you can kind of just do a little bit of this kind of tapped in certain areas. It can be just like here and there, doesn't matter. Just see what happens. Just kind of touch it in. Okay. So I just have it here and there. I have a lot of branches, like out of control amount of branches. So I need to make sure that my branches really stand out. And by putting in some like darker contrasting colors may help those branches kind of stand out. So I just put some right there. I have a couple really big branches right here. So you can use the corner of your brush. You can kind of paint those in if you wanted to. You can use some more contrasting oranges to allow those branches to stand out. Totally up to you. But also just let it dry and come back to it too, right? It's okay. And this is one of those projects, it's okay to let it dry entirely and figure out where you want to refine, like maybe the edges of your birch trees, this and that. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and pin this. So for anyone that's watching the tutorial, please post any questions that you have in the chat below. I'm happy to follow up with you. And I'll go ahead and stop the tutorial. But thanks everyone for watching, and I'll be in touch soon, okay? But I can't wait to see your artwork, and be sure to check out the link in the chat for our Patreon space so you can share your art with our community. All right? Have a great day.